Hi everyone, welcome back. Michael Sandler here, your host on Inspire Nation. If you find yourself confused by diets, yo-yoing up and down with your weight, or even confused by the conflicts amongst the guests we bring on the show, sorry folks, then do we have the show for you. Today we'll be talking with an anti-diet expert. His name is Dr. Joel Fuhrman, and he's one of America's leading nutrition experts. He's appeared on Dr. Oz and even had his own PBS television shows, and if you've ever shopped at Whole Foods, he's the inventor of the ANDI score. He's also the New York Times best-selling author of Eat to Live and has a beautiful new book out, An End to Dieting. And that's just what I want to talk with Joel about today. Atkins, low-carb, high-fat, ketone, vegan, paleo, wheat belly, and the list goes on. And yet we're getting fatter, at the very least, not getting healthier. So I want to talk to him about getting some clarity, figuring out what in the world is going on, and what do we do to get back on track. And I want to talk to him about making it easy. All too often, we hear the latest diet craze, but if it takes 10 hours to prepare our food, or we don't even know where to begin, then we're sunk before we even start. So hopefully today we'll stop a bit in the madness and put an end to dieting once and for all. So welcome to the show, Dr. Fuhrman. Are you ready to shine?
I certainly am. Excited to be here.
Woohoo! Excited to have you on the show. So we were just talking off air briefly about your background, and we have a lot in common. I'm wondering if you can share a little bit of your background and take us forward on the timeline of your life.
Well, I spent most of my childhood as a competitive figure skater. Mm-hmm. And so I was seriously into it by the time I was 10 or 11 years old. And so I skated before school, like 3 hours in the morning before school, and I lifted weights and ran with weights on my back after school, and went to and did exercises all day long. And so as an avid trainer, I was second in the United States in pairs figure skating in 1973. I was third in the world in pairs figure skating in 1976. And in between that time, between 73 and 76, I was on crutches for more than a year. And for part of that time on crutches, I was actually in a wheelchair where I couldn't walk for much of that time, where I had such severe injuries to my foot and my leg. And it stopped me from making the Olympic team. I competed in Broadmoor, Colorado at the 1976 Olympic tryouts, but I had just come off a year of not walking. So my cardiorespiratory condition was somewhat weakened from not training, from loss of time for my training. So I came in fourth that year and didn't make the Olympics.
And to pause you briefly there, for people who don't realize, the Broadmoor Arena is up at over 6,000 feet.
Right.
So if you're not on top of your game and then you're thrown at high altitude.
Exactly. So that's exactly what happened. But then, so after that event, after the Broadmoor Olympic tryouts, the Nationals in the beginning of 76, later on that year, I came in third in the World Professional Championships because it was not at high altitude and I was in better shape by then, coming back from my injury. So an injury kind of derailed my Olympic hopes. But I was, so we have that in common. We both, suffered with the effects of being hurt. I know your injury was more severe than mine, but I've still had probably, took me maybe 5 years or more to really get totally pain-free, for my foot to really heal totally. It took, after I quit skating for many years, when I totally had no more pain in my leg, in my heel. And then I did a very long fast where I didn't eat for many days to think it could help me. And I don't know, I'm not sure how much it did or not, but it kind of weakened me for the years and probably prevented me from getting on the Olympic team. But anyway, so I fasted for over a month of not eating food back then, to see if it could speed up the healing. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I worked in my family's shoe business after I quit skating and turned pro. My father had a chain of 10 shoe stores in the New York metropolitan area, and I went and became an orthotic fabricator and an orthotic designer, and I actually submitted patents on some of my orthotic designs for people with heel pain because I had a heel injury and couldn't walk, and I put this design that would involve cupping of the heel and unweighting of the heel with a ramp in front of the heel, so my heel would be hanging off the edge of a ramp under the orthotic, and I cupped so the fat pad would stay underneath it, and I had a softer part of the center cup and a harder part of the outside cup. So I did. So it's funny. So I was looking at you, and I said, "Wow, boy, we have a lot in common. You're athletic. You got hurt. You got back into shape again. You worked on your body. You designed orthotics. All these things that we have in common. It's kind of funny."
So is that what ended up taking you from there to med school, is trying to find out what the next piece of the puzzle is and helping people get healthy?
Not really. I mean, it really had nothing to do with all that. It was that through my teenage years and my young adult years, I was always enthused about superior nutrition. I would read every book on the subject.
Yeah.
To maximize my performance, I was like a self-taught nutritional expert. And when I first met my wife, and started dating her when I was in my early 20s or mid 20s, I realized that that I wasn't doing my passion. My passion was nutrition and how I could impact people's lives. And I was selling, and I was doing okay with my family's business, but it wasn't my love. So I decided to throw it all out and to re-immerse myself and go back to the postgraduate pre-med program at Columbia, because I already graduated college as a business and economics major,
Yeah.
and it was in my family's business. So I wanted to go back and get the pre-med courses I didn't have. So I didn't start medical school till I was 29 years old.
And so,
But I went with this intent to be a nutritional specialist, even at that age.
I love it. So if I think back on your skating career then, and particularly a red flag comes up when you say that you cut out food for a month, you were a mad scientist.
Yes. Well, I had the calcifications in my heel, and I had split the pat pit under my foot, so there was and it wasn't when I was hospitalized at Lenox Hill Hospital in New York City, and the Olympic Committee had Joe Namath's doctor, Dr. Nicholas, come and see me. He's passed away now.
Yeah.
But he used me as a guinea pig. He wanted to come in there and lacerate the area to see if he could traumatize it to make it heal faster. And I said, wait, I'm not having any part of this. This is crazy. You've done this with other people. He said, no, just with animals. He wanted to make me a guinea pig. So I said, forget it. I'm going to go to Texas and just rest and see if I can fast to absorb the calcifications and distortions in my foot developed from that injury, and see if I can get back. And so I just did it myself, and just eventually gave it time to heal.
Do you still skate?
I do skate a little bit, but mostly I ski. I play tennis. I'm an avid, mogul skier and powder skier. I love to go out, so I'm still very involved with sports and very involved with physical fitness and exercise.
Beautiful. So let's move forward from there. And you had an amazing book, Eat to Live, New York Times bestseller, fantastic. And then after that, you wrote An End to Dieting. What motivated you to do that?
Well, that's not really what happened. I mean, I wrote Eat to Live first in 2004, but I've written 5 New York Times bestsellers since Eat to Live.
Wow.
So I've written 9 books.
Yep.
5 of them have become New York Times bestsellers.
Yep.
Eat to Live was on the bestseller list, was #1 New York Times bestseller, and on the bestseller list for I think at least 2 years. Mm-hmm. It was one of the best-selling diet books of all times as far as the length of its time on the bestseller list. And still is. It still actually sells great today. And there's a revised edition in 2011. But I've had Super Immunity, which tells about how not to get cancer, and I've had Disease Proof Your Child, and I've had The End of Diabetes is one of my best-selling books, and the Eat to Live Cookbook is one of my best-selling books. And then, after all those, I've done all that writing, I realized that there are still a lot of people that do understand they have to eat healthier and do want to change. Mm-hmm. But some of these people have trouble making that commitment to make that change. Their addictions are so serious. Their emotional habits are so bad. They have obstacles that are both physical and emotional, preventing them achieving adherence to a healthy diet. So I wanted to write The End of Dieting to help those people further and to clarify some of the misinformation that's so heavily promoted in the diet industry, and also to emphasize how dangerous it is to go on and off these fad diets that cause you to lose and gain weight, and how unhealthy it is to follow these high-protein diets that can dramatically increase risk of cancer and dramatically increase risk of death. I wanted to make that absolutely clear that this is misinformation that's, how should I say it, irresponsible, mm-hmm. and even deadly if you follow the diets that are most popular out there in the bookstores. So
it's fascinating. We had on recently Michael Greger on how not to die, and he was talking about, and he wasn't suggesting that everybody needs to go on a 100% vegan diet, but Jessica and I had just come off of almost, for myself, almost lifelong vegan and vegetarian, and had been going, as part of my healing process, had been trying a meat-based diet. And he was pointing out statistics that said that showed these studies of people switching from vegan or vegetarian to a meat-based diet and how much the risk of cancer went up.
Well, I don't think the studies really show the switching, but we do follow people. Like, let me just say this, that we know that there's $1 billion invested, billions and billions of dollars to try to defeat the science, mm-hmm. the evidence. The preponderance of evidence is overwhelming and clear, but there are billions of dollars spent to put doubt in people's minds. so they can still eat their cheese and eggs and meat, so they can still salt their food heavily, so they can still eat sugar and donuts, and they can still eat, everyone wants to deny that diet plays a role, especially when you're selling donuts, when you're selling burgers, when you're selling eggs. You want to try to produce studies to counter what the science shows. And they'll use sometimes short-term studies over a year or so to say, look, the cholesterol did not drop, or the cholesterol did not go up, so it's not bad to eat high saturated fat or bad to eat eggs. They'll take a population, for example, on a high meat, high cholesterol diet, and then add an egg, and the amount of cholesterol addition to what they're already eating is insignificant, so you won't see a big change. And they won't tell you what if you gave an egg to people on a very low cholesterol diet, the change is tremendously high, or the amount of diabetes doubles when you give it to pre-diabetics. So in other words, there's a lot of doubt, and that doubt and those, how should we say, those scam studies or sham studies are used by a whole bunch of authors and people in the media to try to get people convinced that it's okay to eat foods that are dangerous. But what we have today is we have long-term studies where we follow people for 10, 15, and 20 years. And those studies aren't doing soft endpoints like cholesterol levels. They're doing hard endpoints like death and cancer risk. And for example, one study we can mention followed 6,000 people for 18 years. And this was a 50 to 65 age range. And followed for 18 years those eating more animal products. And the ones that were eating the most animal products were eating approximately 30% of calories from animal products.
Okay.
Compared to those eating a small amount or 10% or less. So keep in mind here that those eating 30%, what they considered a very high amount of animal protein, were not eating a lot of animal protein by Americans SAD or Standard American Diet standards, because the Americans already eat 30%. That was just about the way Americans eat already. Nothing like the 50 to 70% a lot of Atkins and paleo advocates are telling people to eat. Yet in that group that ate 30% of calories from animal products, they had a 75% increased risk of death over that 18-year period, and a four-time increased risk of cancer over the 18-year period. Now that was followed up by a study in more than 100,000 people. Actually, it was about 140,000 women and about 80,000 men, followed for 20 years. And they followed people on various types of diet. We're talking about we're talking about more than 200,000 people here, right? Followed for 20 years or more.
Which is massive, to say the least.
Massive studies, right? And what they show is that as your diet pattern adheres to this higher protein, lower carbohydrate model better, as you approach, we could say, this Atkins-style diet, you eat more meat and less carbohydrate vegetables, you have a correspondingly increased risk of premature death, cancer, and heart disease. And they found it so that the people who modeled that diet better had a 60% increased risk of death over that period, 20 years studied, compared to people that modeled a diet that was lower in animal products and higher in plant foods. And that wasn't comparing a vegan diet or a diet that you're talking about. We're talking about even a diet with less animal products versus more, which makes me say that there are three things today that all nutritional scientists agree with. And that is, let's just review those three things so we know there's no controversy. Then we can talk about the controversies, what we know is not controversial. Number one, we know that it's not controversial eating highly refined and processed high glycemic carbohydrates. That means they're refined, they're processed, they're low in nutrients, they're high glycemic, which means they produce a lot of glucose in the bloodstream, which the body has to respond by producing a high insulin response from the pancreas. And those foods like white rice and white bread and sugar, we all recognize are contributors to obesity and diabetes and dementia and cancer. They're not just cause overweight, but they promote cancer. They're dangerous. Everybody recognizes that today. No controversy there. High glycemic foods promote cancer. And we should eat less of them, or we should not eat them at all. Number two, that whole natural plant foods, not the processed foods, but the natural things, the carrots, the string beans, the beans, the nuts, the avocado, the natural foods that we eat, the broccoli, the things we eat from the ground when they're unprocessed forms, have not just 14 vitamins and 16 minerals, but they have thousands of nutrients in them needed by humans. And they work most effectively when we eat a variety of produce in our diet, and a lot of it. When we eat a lot of produce and a huge variety of produce, our body gets bathed with amount of antioxidants and phytochemicals that arm our cells' ability to remove metabolic waste products, to detoxify carcinogens and toxins, and to heal broken DNA crosslinks and repair things that could lead to cancer. Our body is a miraculous self-healing machine when it's adequately armed with this broad spectrum of nutrients present in natural foods. So there's no controversy, and everybody agrees that Americans eat way too much fresh produce and need to eat much more produce, eat a diet higher in natural nutrients, and it should be the major source of what we eat. And number three, the third thing, the last thing.
Yep.
There's no controversy among leading nutritional scientists the world over that Americans are eating way too many animal products, and we have to eat a dramatically lower amount. So there's no controversy there. We see as animal products increase, and it's not just because of the commercially farmed animal products. They're fed corn instead of grass. They're not wild animal products. It's not just that at all. Even people eating higher amounts of wild animal products. We still see in Uruguay, where they eat all grass-fed, or in Australia, where they eat almost all grass-fed, we still see higher cancer rates and higher heart attack rates in people eating even the naturally raised animal products as well. And one of the factors involved here is the high amount of biological protein, the animal protein, not just the fat, but the high level of protein drives a hormone called IGF-1, or insulin-like growth factor 1, which drives cellular replication and aging of the body and premature death. So we're talking about sandwiching in this, putting together a diet that Americans eat that's high in insulin from processed carbohydrates. And it's also high in animal products, raising both insulin and IGF-1, which stands for insulin-like growth factor 1. And when you mix together...
To jump in for a brief second, a lot of people will say, and I need you to rebut this, but I need protein, and I need quality protein, and I need animal protein, and I'm going to be unhealthy. My doctor says I need to eat more protein.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm addressing that somewhat with what we're talking about here, because it's that kind of message from your personal trainer and maybe even your doctor or the book you read that is so irresponsible that is killing people, because there's huge economic forces driving people to want to sell that to people and to sell the message they want to hear, because eating a high protein diet is somewhat addicting. But what I'm saying is, what I was just going to mention just briefly.
Sorry, you were putting these together, yes.
But when you put it together, like the hamburger with the bread and the cheese, or the bread and the meat, or the macaroni and cheese, or the pizza, that's when you really put together a cancer sandwich, when you raise them both simultaneously. That's the most dangerous way to eat we could possibly imagine, which I call, and that's why I say, that diet's been designed by Al-Qaeda. But all right, now I'll answer you. The basic question is that, people are saying we learned when we were kids, and it's very hard for people to, how should we say, undo the brainwashing they get when they're children. Where when our minds are developing, we're told things to believe in, and we accept those beliefs as if they're absolute truths because we learned them when we're young. And obviously, people learn that we learned when we went to kindergarten, elementary school, the 4 basic food groups and the value of eating chicken, meat, and cheese, and we should drink our milk every day. But you know what? That's not what we've learned over the last 20, in recent times, in the last 20 years of science. We've seen the complete opposite to be the case, and that we have to eat, our protein should come from sources that don't have a high biological value. In other words, it's the high biological value protein that drives up these cancer-causing hormones and drives cancer cells to replicate.
Is biological value, does that mean higher on the food chain, or does that mean animal? What is biological value?
Well, it does generally refer to animal products, because animal products, the proteins are more complete. Their higher biological value means they have more, the 8 essential amino acids are present, so the body can utilize that without taking time to mix and wait till the digestive tract takes in the other amino acid to match it, or the sloughing off of the lining of the digestive tract and the self-digestion of the cells that line our digestive tract, the bacteria present in the digestive tract, and the digestive enzymes. The body can balance out and make its own high biological value proteins, but it takes more hours to do so. So because the body isn't flooded in a high rate of biological protein and so quickly, the body doesn't respond with producing so much insulin or IGF-1, insulin-like growth hormone, in response to it. So it's safer for the body to deal with lower biological value proteins that are found in green vegetables and beans and whole grains and nuts and seeds, and to use minimal or little animal products.
I want to pause you for a second. I almost feel like we need to say that again, and it's such a mind bender. The concept in the past was eat the highest, most complete protein that you can, because that's the one that's going to help you build the most. And what you're saying is we need to take instead the individual building blocks so that the body has a chance to build it itself, so it's not flooding the system.
That's exactly correct. That's the type of, as a primate, our requirements in our digestive tract and our body works differently. And that's why we can live to 100 years old if we take the right care of our body. We could also die at 60 if we take the wrong care of our body, but obviously most Americans, when they're living in their late 70s, have a very poor quality of life in their between 60 and 75 when they die, because they're sickly. They're spending half their life on medications and sick and unable to be fully active. Like I said, I'm in my 60s and I love to mogul ski and ski paddle and jump out of, I love to be physically fit and to do mountain biking and to do aggressive sports and play football. I don't want to be crippled and sitting on a couch in my 60s. I want to live my life. I wanted to do what I like to do. But that's the point. We're healthier. And the main point is that you can live longer, not in pain, with your full mental and physical faculties intact. So you're not just living 15 or 20 years longer. You're living 15 or 20 years longer with 40 years of better life because the Americans dying younger have such a poor quality of life in their later years. And then they suffer so much with these medical problems. They're eating themselves to death. So yes, the high biological protein is a big part of this. And that we could say that, well, as you get older, you don't want your IGF-1 levels to fall too low. And what level of animal products consumption would keep the IGF-1 in that favorable range of being low but not being too low? And here's where the controversy arises, and this is where genetic differences could accommodate different needs. And there may be a range from 0 to 10. Okay. I'm saying that for the sweet spot, we want to cast out a wide net, which means we want most people to do great and live to 100 years old eating a healthy diet. And to get the widest net, most people should be eating either between 0 and 10. Well, I say don't eat more than 5% of animal products in your diet, maximum 10. But there may be some people who do better with a little more, and some people do better with a little less. But nobody should be eating the high amounts of animal products advocated by those popular diets. And nobody should be eating the amount of animal products eaten by most Americans, where they eat animal products every single meal. That's just insanity. And it shows a degree of ignorance, and it shows a degree of bias, because unless you're biased, you can't come to that. Decision to want to do that unless you have an inherent bias, because there's too much information that shows that's dangerous today.
Can you talk about? I'm thinking of Dr. Michelle Cigar. We had her on the show. She has a book, No Sweat, talking about motivation, and that long-term motivation doesn't typically work for us. We need to know what's in it for us today. So are there ways that switching to a diet lower in these proteins that we will feel better now or feel better shortly?
Well, look, I don't necessarily agree with that viewpoint, because I think everything contributes to your ability to adhere to a healthy diet. It's not one thing or another. Everything contributes to agree. Yes, people say, fear doesn't matter. Worrying you're going to die or worrying you have a heart attack doesn't make people change their diet. That's not true. It has an effect. It doesn't have maybe as much of an effect as something else, but everything has an effect cumulatively. We're appealing to people's intellect here. And, your future self is going to look back on you, 30, 40 years from you and say, are you taking care of the future you? And smart people take care of their future. Smart people get an education for that reason. You could say, well, we just want to say our benefits here and now. Then nobody would go to college or get a PhD or go to medical school for that matter. But some of us do things to benefit our future. You know what I mean? And the smarter you are, the more likely you'll make decisions that will benefit you years later. You know what I mean? But which we've all done. But nevertheless, you're right that when you eat healthy, you feel better right away. You have more energy. You concentrate better. It helps people's emotional outlook on life. You are better equipped to deal with the stresses in your life and to solve them with solutions and not just to wallow in your own self-pity. When you're a food addict, and most Americans are food addicts, they're looking for rationalizations to rationalize their addiction. We have two selves and we have two brains. The primitive brain doesn't really think of our future. It just wants what it wants, like a little baby wanting its bottle right now.
Give me the donut.
Give me the donut right now. That's what it wants. And that primitive brain, for people who are addicted to sugar and salt and highly concentrated fats, they'll want to come up with some kind of rationalization, no matter how delusional, and they'll want to hold on to that. Like the smoker will say, well, it's not the right time for me to quit because my husband's, lost his job and my son smashed up the car. I have too much stress in my life. And if you had the stress I had, you'd smoke too. This is what they might say, right? But that's bull. I mean, that's just that the smoking is an outlet for them to deal with their stress, yes, but it takes them away from being able to solve the problems of their life. It distracts them from putting their full energies and mental ability to make their life better. Every person who has an addict can't make their life get better. Their life comes in a dismal cycle of one stressful situation after another because the addictive behavior contributes to the accumulation of those stresses and their overall failures in life. It's only people that can get through that, get rid of their addictions, and get set free that can reduce the stress in their life. So what I'm saying to you is that when you get rid of your depression, when you can devote your full intellectual awareness and mental faculties to solving the problems in your life, that's when you get the most happiness. And if you have medical problems all the time, that's also a tremendous inhibitor to being successful in life when you don't have your health.
That absolutely makes sense. So I want to address two things in a row here. First, maybe we look at, and you can flip the order if you'd like. First, I'd like to look at 5 specific diets that you do mention in your book, and I could read each one of those off to you. And the second is, what are the steps we begin doing to kick this addiction? Because this ain't easy.
Right. So, even though we talked about 3 things most scientists would agree on, this diet style, I have like 4 basic principles. If you don't mind, can I just give a 5-minute viewpoint of what a nutritarian diet is? Okay, so people
absolutely.
And then we can see how easy it is to just apply this. It's really simple. Like the way you apply it to answer the question is, well, the first thing you do is you eat a salad every day as a main dish. Like I said, the first thing you do is write it on your refrigerator. Get it a piece of paper and get a marker and write down right now the salad is the main dish. And at least once a day have a giant salad as the main dish of the meal. That's the first step you can take. But let me go through the basic principles first.
Please.
Number 1, a nutritarian diet is rich in nutrients. That's why it's called nutritarian, because it's rich in nutrients. So it has a high nutrient per calorie density, meaning that we're trying to remove foods that supply us with calories with no significant micronutrient load, and opposed to eating foods that are rich in nutrients like vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and phytochemicals. Want to seek out and eat more foods that are naturally nutrient rich. That's the first principle, to say nutrient density. The second principle is we want to, in a comprehensive fashion, consume every nutrient that humans need. In other words, it's not good enough to just eat broccoli and strawberries. That's not good enough, because you still be low in DHA, vitamin D, K2, zinc, iodine. In other words, we have to make sure that we're not low in anything humans need to maximize their health. Number three, we want to avoid foods that drive hormones into cancer-promoting levels. And those primary hormones, we could say estrogen and insulin and IGF-1, but here's where you bring up the fact that obviously avoiding processed foods and animal products are key, because both those foods, because I always say, why is a bagel like a piece of chicken? And I ask the audience, why is a bagel like a piece of chicken? And I'll ask them that after I lecture to them for an hour. And very often they still can't give me the answer, even though I explained it to them for a whole hour, that a bagel is like a piece of chicken because neither of them contain a high micronutrient load. The bagel is high in carbohydrate, the chicken is high in protein, but those aren't micronutrients, those are macronutrients. We're already getting too much macronutrients. We got to get more micronutrients and eat less macronutrients. The bagel's like the piece of chicken because they're both examples of foods with a very small level of micronutrients in them. Yet there's a second reason why the bagel's like a piece of chicken. And that second reason is they both drive hormones up that cause cancer. The bagel drives up insulin, and the chicken buys up IGF-1 because it's concentrated animal protein. So there's 2 basic reasons why we're avoiding eating foods that are dangerous microbes. And the fourth and last basic principle is that we should avoid consuming toxins, poisons, carcinogens, or dangerous microbes like worms and pathogenic microbes. In other words, we should avoid foods we know are poisonous or toxic, like the dioxin in farm-raised salmon, or the E. coli in commercially raised meats. In other words, we should avoid things we know are dangerous. That's obvious. We shouldn't eat poisons. But in any case, so we want the diet to be largely made of plant foods, and you could do a nutritarian vegan diet, or you could do a nutritarian diet where a person uses animal products as a condiment in a very small amount a few times a week. But in both cases, the diet is largely made of plants and largely natural plants, obviously.
So that makes sense. So then going from there, let's address real briefly a little bit on the specific diets, and then let's do some how-to here. I think we've been talking about the SAD diet, the standard American diet. We know that's out. Paleo, you were talking about meat promoting cancer, so we got that. Mediterranean, in your book you say why olive oil is not a health food.
Well, look, I mean, the first thing we want to recognize is that if people accept those basic principles and that we're trying to eat foods that contain nutrients, then an olive oil will be an example of food that's a rich source of calories. But where are the nutrients? How do the nutrients in olive oil compare to an olive? How do the nutrients in walnut oil compare to a walnut? Where do the nutrients in sunflower seed oil compare to a sunflower seed? And the point is, I'm not against you eating those fats. I'm against you not getting the full sunflower seed in, because there's so many lignins and other nutrients in that sunflower seeds that you remove and threw away when you took in the oil. There's so many beneficial nutrients for the brain, for the eyes, for your bones even, when you eat a walnut versus the walnut oil. Do you know that when you have the lignins that are present in the flax seeds and the sesame seeds, it shows a dramatic lowering rate of cancer, but just flax seeds have been shown to lower blood pressure as much as drugs do. And the oil can't do that. So there was a study, for example, that was done on the Mediterranean diet where they took people and they gave them olive oil. And they gave them olive oil in place of using butter, right? And other carbohydrate foods. They had more oil calories in their diet and less butter and less carbohydrates. And those people with more olive oil in the diet lived longer. They lived longer and less heart attacks than those people eating saturated fat from butter or having more high refined carbohydrates like white rice and. But now they took those people and they followed them who had walnuts in their diet and nuts in place of olive oil. And they found a dramatic lowering of the heart disease rate from moving from oil to walnuts. But not only that, it was only the group eating nuts, like walnuts, that showed reversal of heart disease, not just slowing of the worsening process, but actually resolving of the atherosclerosis. Right. So, and I've been doing this for 25 years as a physician specializing in nutrition. I just published a study in the American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine, and we surveyed about 1,000 people, but about 450 of those people had high blood pressure. And what do you think happened to these people's blood pressure? 450 people's blood pressure on drugs, not on drugs. Most of them were taking medications after following a nutrient diet for 6 months.
Well, you're leading the witness here, so there's nothing I can say besides it had to have gone down.
Well, that's right. People are able to get off their medications and normalize their blood pressure. They're able to get off their medications and get rid of their diabetes completely. They're able to get off their medications and get rid of their cholesterol-lowering drugs, and their heart disease melts away. By the way, the actual number in that study, to be specific, it dropped people on the average, their systolic blood pressure by 26 points on the average. That's huge. That's compared to medications, which only drop your blood pressure an average of 10 points per medication you're on, or obviously the DASH diet, which drops blood pressure, or Mediterranean diet, which drops 7 to 11 points. We're talking about we want to give people the full opportunity to get well, and not water down inflammation that's just a small step in the right direction, because for many people, they not getting well could cause them to die, right? And for many people, staying on those medications are dangerous. Like, I don't think many people are aware, for example, that when people are followed taking calcium channel blockers for 10 years or more, they have double the risk of breast cancer. Now, how many, do you know that? So we're talking about drugs for blood pressure increasing risk of breast cancer. We're talking about cholesterol medications increasing risk of breast cancer. Taking them both together, increasing risk of cancer. If people are given these facts, that angioplasty and bypass surgery put you at higher risk of having a stroke. They put a foreign body in your heart with that stent. Now you have to be on clot-busting drugs the rest of your life, increasing risk of having a gastrointestinal bleed, a hemorrhagic stroke. We're talking here about when a healthy diet, a nutritarian diet, could have resolved that heart disease problem. In a matter of weeks or months, your pain could have gone away. You wouldn't have had to put a foreign body in your heart. You could have not had to be on these medications for the rest of your life. That can increase risk of cancer and increase risk of having a hemorrhagic stroke or a gastrointestinal bleed. What I'm saying to you is that if people got truly informed consent, if they knew how little doctors can do to influence their ultimate lifespan and their overall health, and they knew how dangerous the medical interventions really were, and how advantageous and effective nutritional excellence is to modify and to remove their disease process, you'd have the masses moving to change their diets and dropping conventional medical care. It's just people aren't informed about enough. They don't know enough to make an educated decision. And that's what my new book's all about. I have a book coming out in April of 2016 called The End of Heart Disease. And it talks about not just the benefits of eating this way, it analyzes all the diets used to reverse heart disease and what the pros and cons would be in a very unbiased and comprehensive fashion. But it analyzes conventional medical care. What is cholesterol and drugs? What about taking an aspirin? What about getting an angioplasty or having bypass surgery? What about taking diabetic medications? It shows you how the conventional approach to disease is a failure. And if you know how dangerous it really is, you couldn't possibly not want to eat this way. You couldn't possibly not be motivated to change. And the last thing is, which we talked about in what we're talking about today, is that your taste buds change with time, and your pleasure doesn't get decreased. Your pleasure of living and of even eating gets enhanced. And I did a study that was published in the medical journal called Nutrition Journal in 2012. And it followed over 750 people, plotting their addictive sensations of hunger and their addictive drives to overeat. And one of the questions on the survey was, how do you enjoy your present way of eating, the nutritarian diet, compared to the pleasure and taste enjoyment you got from your old diet? And over 90% of those people surveyed, we're talking about more than 750 people, said that they enjoyed eating this way as much or more than their old diet. And the reason for that is it takes time to learn the recipes. It takes time for the taste buds to reacclimate themselves. But your taste gets stronger over time. Just like your blood pressure drops, and your eyesight improves, and your concentration improves, and your emotions improve, your taste improves too. And it gets so sensitized and so strong that the high salt foods you used to like and the high sugary foods that you used to like you don't get attracted to anymore. They become distasteful. You want to spit them out. You can trace the ice cream made from like that ice cream company that has the soft ice cream, and you put it in your mouth and you go, oh, I could taste the bleach in the ice cream. There's like chlorine bleach in there, and it's too sweet. And I enjoyed the soft ice cream I made by myself at home with the frozen bananas and the walnuts and the vanilla and a little coconut mixed in there without even a sweetener. I enjoy, or if I want to put a sweetener, put a little date in there, but I enjoyed the flavor of that better because it wasn't so overpoweringly sweet, and I didn't have to taste the chemicals in there. It's like you go to the restaurant after following a healthy diet it's your birthday, you lost 50 pounds, you're in great shape now. It's okay, I'm going to have barbecued ribs and some cheesecake a la mode, because I used to love that. I had this memory of loving that. I can treat myself. I've lost the weight. I can do some. My birthday, you dig into it and you go, ugh, I can't believe I used to love this stuff. It's like too heavily flavored. It's too salty. How did I even like it like this? You know what I mean? So the point that I'm making now is this is not about decreasing pleasure in life. Mm-hmm. It's about that your pleasure is approximately the same or even more eating this way. And intellectually, you're marrying together your best intellectual self and satisfaction that you're doing the right thing for your body with the sensations, with your emotional feelings, and that you're enjoying eating this food so much, and you can marry together good health, good taste, and fulfillment and pleasure and fun in life. Because life is all about fun. And eating healthy is not about being in a prison. It's being set free from prison.
So let's for this last little bit we have, one of the main things I want to go through is setting us free from prison. Because both Jessica and I, my wife and myself, she'd been sick for a long time, almost 2 years. We just did a show on it because she's doing so much better recently. And one of the big shifts we made is getting into an extreme nutrient-dense diet where we looked at every single thing. And we basically, without knowing your formula, you have a beautiful formula on H equals N over C for nutrient density. We were just looking at it as what does this have we can get in there and how can we get the most nutrient density in? But it takes some time and it takes some doing, and we had no choice. And so we went down that road, and we're both feeling years and years younger and more energized and more focused, crystal clear thinking. Right. So we've got a salad. What are some of the other easy key components we can fit in? And I'm going to use the word fit in because I hear so many people saying, and I've been one of them because I'm working so darn hard on this job, who say, I don't have time for a lot of food prep. Where do I begin?
It's really easy. And I'm glad we're bringing it up right before we end, because it's really important that the second most important thing beside that salad is to make a big pot of vegetable bean soup on the weekend. And it could be a chili or it could be a vegetable stew, not necessarily a soup, but let's say I'm making this soup and it has tomato and carrot juice in it, and has mushrooms and onions, it has like broccoli rabe or collard greens or kale in it, it's got leeks in it, it's got, in other words, I make this big hearty soup, and I could put the whole big pot in my refrigerator that night, and when it gets cold the next morning, I can aliquot it out into 10 different containers and just grab the salad with the dressing I made on Wednesday night and Sunday night, and I can take it with me to work each day and have it soup the whole week. So the second most important thing is to eat those beans every day. But I have this acronym that helps people memorize the important foods to try to eat every day. Keep the most powerful anti-cancer foods in the forefront of their mind. And that acronym is called G-BOMBS. G-BOMBS. G-B-O-M-B-S. Greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. Did you have little flaxseed or chia seeds on your steel-cut oats this morning with the berries? Did you have berries in there? Did you have your salad with the greens, with the cruciferous greens on top? Did you have your nuts and seeds? Today, did you have your cooked mushrooms? Cooked mushrooms, not raw, in the soup or something, because raw mushrooms have a mild carcinogen called agaritine that blows off with cooking. And then when you make that soup, did you do it to maximize the production, the retention of those anti-cancer nutrients? Do you know how to cook it the right way? When you ate that salad, did you know to put a nut-based dressing on top to facilitate the absorption of those phytochemicals, and to put a little cruciferous vegetables cut up on there like watercress or arugula or cabbage, and a little raw onion too to get those anti-cancer nutrients in? So when you know the right way to eat and prepare, the right way to make the dressings, and the right way to make the soups and the stews, it becomes very easy to do. Breakfast is easy, lunch is easy, dinner you make the salad dressing or the dip twice a week. It's pretty easy to throw it together. So we're talking here about the right type of knowledge and skill. When people learn the right skills, how to make the recipes and how to prepare their diet in advance, it becomes a no-brainer, very easy to do.
Do you use a crock pot yourself?
Sometimes. I think today we have a crock pot going. Sometimes I'm making I'm a big fan, and one of my hobbies is to grow tomatoes in my garden. Like I'll grow more tomatoes in it than 5 families can eat. And I want to stew it all day long to make tomato sauce,
It was something I was talking with Jessica and I about, because we both struggled. The house we came out of had black mold. We didn't know it. We got really sick. And so we've been staying away from things that are moldy. And one of the things I've kept us off of is tomatoes. And I said, honey, in this book, he's going tomatoes, 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 tomatoes. It sounds like it's time to get back on tomatoes, isn't it?
Well, cooked tomato products are incredibly powerful food to protect disease and to make you live longer, especially against prostate cancer and breast cancer. But there are a small number of people that are sensitive to the nightshades in tomatoes and potatoes and peppers and eggplant. And that percent of people may be under 2% of the population. And some of those people can use them moderately, and some of those people shouldn't use them at all. But for those of us who are not nightshade sensitive, we should not be avoiding tomatoes. They're a great food, especially we're saying here about you can cook tomatoes. But I love raw tomatoes in my salad. You can't get tomatoes that taste as good as when you grow your own. That's I guess the point I'm making too.
Yeah. And that makes perfect sense. So a few quick questions before we wrap things up. First off, I was on for a long time to try to get my blood sugar levels under control, a very high-fat, almost ketone-based diet.
What? You were eating what were you eating? You eating like hemp seeds and just nuts and
hemp seed, chia seeds, macadamia nuts, olive oil, avocado.
I see. Okay.
But we had on a recent guest, and part of the reason I brought that up is we had on a recent guest who's a leading trainer in this country, who was talking about the benefits as for endurance training and for health by being on such a diet. And so my audience could be a little bit confused because that was a recent guest. And so I don't want to dramatize the point, but I felt it was worth asking. So thank you. Can you tell us why it's not good to go that direction? And I had my bone density tested after being on that for a few years, and it was through the floor.
I see. I didn't really address that point because I misinterpreted what you were saying and thought you were talking about high-protein animal product-based diets. I still think that's not a healthy way to eat long-term. And anytime there may be some short-term people with extra fat in the body because you get a lot of water weight loss, and when you go into ketosis, you burn fat more rapidly. But you do so by putting the body under stress. And it's not something that's going to lead to longevity. It's not a longevity strategy. And I argued in the book, The End of Dieting, that those short-term strategic diets are actually dangerous long-term because your weight fluctuates too quickly upward and downward, which is not good for your health.
Makes sense. You mentioned in your book something you call the secret weight loss food. And what would be that, or a few favorite healthy foods you would have?
My secret weight loss food? I don't remember. Was it beans?
Well, you do have the next thing that you had that I have on the list. It probably was because you said that you have a bean dinner loaf, and I'd never heard of a bean dinner loaf before.
Oh, it was something to do with beans. Yeah, okay. Well, I am a big advocate of beans. I want to eat people eat a lot of raw food and salads, but that's where the vegetable soup or stew comes in. And I do eat a lot of beans in the diet. But there's so many protective features of beans that we don't have time to talk about today. But the one feature is they have a tremendous effect on the microbiome, because you grow a whole different variety of bacteria in the gut when you're a regular bean eater. And those bacteria that grow in response to the regular eating of beans have profound benefits on your lifespan and longevity and strengthening your bones and fighting cancer. And they reduce the glucose absorption of other foods, so they lower the glycemic effect of your whole diet even when you're not eating beans at the same meal. So yes, they're an incredibly powerful weight loss food. So it's greens, beans, mushrooms, and onions. Just think of G-bombs, because the same foods that prevent cancer are the same foods that interfere with fat deposition on the body and keep your diet low glycemic and lifespan favorable.
Please forgive me for asking this question. Beans, farting, gas. What does that mean? I take it as if I'm eating a bunch of beans and my body is unsettled, that it's either not good for me or I just have to really portion it down. Is that just an adjustment period?
Yes, that means you're not eating beans every day. If you're getting indigestion and excess gas production from beans, it means you're eating beans irregularly, and your body is not getting the full benefit of the buildup of bacteria it needs to build up to digest beans better, and that'll add to your health and longevity. So cut your bean intake down so you have a little less gas, but make sure you have the beans every single day, more regularly, and not just 2 times a week. 2 times a week, more gas. 6 times a week, no gas.
Fantastic. Got it. So a wrap-up question we like to ask all of our guests just before the end, which is, what personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor? Well,
I'm so thrilled. I'm so ramped up about life because I see people transforming their health and recovering their health. What it gives me, you have a person who has ulcerative colitis, who's having 8 bloody bowel movements a day, and now they don't need surgery, they're off the medications, they're totally well. That's woohoo, that's unbelievable. A person who had advanced heart disease, totally need angioplasty or bypass surgery, now is running races and exercising all day. A woman who can't get up out of a wheelchair to walk, and now she's out there going to dance class every day. A person who had ovarian cancer, metastasized to her lung, is now 20 years later in perfect health. In other words, I'm watching people get well from autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and psoriasis melt away. I'm watching people with early stage cancers, and some with late stage, but mostly early stage cancers, go away and get well again. I'm watching people with heart disease get their health back. And I'm so grateful to have this opportunity as a doctor to be able to see this happening to people. And it's why I chose this as a career, and why I get so much fun from this, and why I'm on such a mission for people to know this information, because then they can get the same pleasure from not just getting their own self in great shape, but then sharing it with others and watching the people that they have impact on get well too. And you're feeling some of this pleasure too. It's just so much fun to watch people recover their health. Right.
That is a big woohoo. So where can people go to find out more and to find your books?
So go to you obviously can buy books on Amazon or any place else that sells books, but my website is drfuhrman.com. That's drfuhrman.com. And I have a lot of supportive services and products there, especially to give people more emotional and motivation and psychological help, and to give them, then to make this easy and easily doable. But the last thing is that the more information people have and the more they become the expert in the science that supports, that underlies this, the easier it becomes for them to do it. So the first thing to do is don't just do it, but become an expert. And I'm really strongly recommending they read one of my recent books.
I like that. The idea of geeking out on your own health. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been fantastic. I recommend for everybody out there to get an end to dieting. I think it'd be exceptionally helpful for you.
It's the end of dieting.
To get the end of dieting.
Thank you.
So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, put an end to dieting with the end to dieting, and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. That was good.
Everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!